the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. AVWeek.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us this week, Mr. John Green from Advanced AV. How are you, sir?
Wonderful. Great day today. Beautiful. This is the first full day of fall.
First full day of fall. It still feels like summer here in St. Louis.
Yeah, we're hitting about 85, but we're getting ready for it. It's great.
Yeah, eventually. Also with us is Gina Sansevero from FSR. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing very well. I'm very happy to be home in New York today.
Yay. Go Mets, sort of, kind of. Maybe. Depends.
Well, we're in Jets mode right now. And with this fantasy football thing that I've joined, I've been kind of really rooting for my Jets because nobody told me that you're supposed to diversify your team.
Oh, yes.
Oh, the rookie mistake.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a Bears fan, so put all Bears on it. Yes.
But my 11 is going to be awful.
Oh, yeah. No, I mentioned the Mets because if you are a baseball fan, at least in the National League, there is a three-way race for the wild card. One being the St. Louis Cardinals, the other one being the Mets.
Yep.
Depending on the day of the week, it's also either the Dodgers and or the Giants. So, that's a whole nother story. All right, enough about sports. Somebody has told me once we need to do a sports show, but I don't believe it. First and foremost up, we've got 3 or 4 different topics we're going to do here this week. First one, though, is CEDIA. And 2 or 3 years ago, if you told me that I was going to go to CEDIA, I would have said you're crazy, right? We were primarily a commercial AV podcast, commercial AV site. That's what we did. And we started getting into more and more residential stories. A lot of our folks are in residential, so we started going to the show. Now we have a residential focus show, so we certainly go. But as I was I went last week along. We had our buddy Stephen Bronner and Todd Puma and Rich Fragoza and a number of other folks that were there that helped us out. I'm walking the show floor going, holy crap, a lot of this stuff is going to land into corporate boardrooms and into education and into a number of other things. The story we're using is from High Def Digest. They list what they call the top 6 highlights from CEDIA 2016. The first one I want to get to, and I'm going to ask both John and Gina, from their standpoint, not having gone to the show, but from seeing all the coverage, what they think is going to hit commercial. The first one I want to point out, though, is the Sony. It's called the Sony UBP Umbrella Brian Pickle X1000ES. I really need to learn that. It is the first actual, honest to goodness, Ultra HD Blu-ray player. You can play an actual Ultra HD Blu-ray physical media. So that's one of the things that I'm going to say. I'm going to save the rest of them for after my fine guest comment on this. But John, we'll start with you from the coverage that you've seen, and it doesn't have to be on this list, but just the stuff that you saw.
Right.
What do you think is going to hit commercial coming out of CEDIA this year?
It's funny. I was scheduled to go to CEDIA, and some business obligations pulled me back. I was planning on spending a full week there ourselves for the same purpose. I mean, we know for a fact that a lot of the things that are coming out of the consumer world are going to basically hit the boardroom, just as you called it out. There's waves of that. I mean, there's times when some of the consumer stuff comes running into the corporate space, and there's other times it's just almost not relevant. But it's getting to be, those conversations are starting to happen. I didn't see on the list what would really, but VUI, it's a new term, a new acronym, and I'm like, what is that? And it's basically voice user interface, is what I guess I'm pulling it out. And then it was one of the purposes of us to go out there, is to see, can an Echo control the things in the room that people want to control? So
Darn Skippy, it can.
And yes, yeah, that's the issue. And I just think it's going to be accepted and requested. I don't have any personal experience on it, but I can tell you that the other thing that I saw coming out of CEDIA was home control. I mean, basically iPhone control and the new app where I downloaded, the new operation system for my iPhone. It's 10 and it's got this little app called Home, and it's going to be able to control all the devices. And there's tons of devices from lights all the way through that are going to be, controlled. Once that really is accepted, and I think it's just going to be demanded more and more. And I think that what we think we need to control in a room from an end user standpoint is going to change dramatically.
All right, Gina, from your standpoint, what did you see come out of CEDIA that you think may be hitting either corporate or education?
So from my standpoint, I just want to go back to that Blu-ray player really quickly. You brought up a good point, and yeah, it's an amazing product. But what I've been seeing in education is a lot of digitized media that's housed elsewhere. And so I don't know if I see that being a huge player in the education market, which is my specialty. I possibly for corporate, I don't know. But I just don't see it being a big player for the education market. I see, John, did you want to say something?
No, I agree. I think that not so much in corporate space. I don't think that the content is that pressing, but I think that we do a fair amount in healthcare. And I think that, again, as the content stored on that media, whether it's a CD or what otherwise, then you'll need to be able to display it. But it's, again, I'm not sure ultra high definition, 4K, 8K, whatever you want to call it, has really been asked for, demanded, right, as of yet.
Right. I'm seeing a lot of schools storing their digitized content in the cloud, being able to push it into the classrooms on demand from remote distance learning areas or from students, in their dorms or in their houses. So hardware like Blu-ray players are not as prevalent or not being used in upgrade budgets as much as they were before. The other thing that I thought was interesting that was on that list were these those headphones. They're really cool looking. They're gorgeous headphones. So yesterday I was at an event, and the event we were presenting about collaboration spaces, and somebody was talking about audio, and they said, well, what are your recommendations for audio in these smaller group study rooms up to the audio in these active learning spaces, all of which encourage collaboration? And I said, at this point, my son is very happy listening to his music with earbuds in his ears, using his iPod. Clarity is probably fine, and he's probably thinking it's great, but I remember sitting in my father's living room while my father wore a pair of headphones very similar to those, and he could hear every nuance and every squeak and every sound that those instruments made. And so I sat down with the guy following the collaboration presentation, and I said, you have to sit down with your end user, because they have to define what the expectation is with regard to audio and video in that space. I can sit here and I can say, I can point you to the integrators who will give you the highest level experience that you can possibly have. But when good enough is good enough,
Well, I agree. I agree with you, Gina. I mean, we just left a college that you're very familiar with, that they're trying to put the entire room solution for audio visual into a $5,000 package. So they are really, the feedback that they're getting from the end users, and a lot, at least in the educational market, is good enough is the bar to hit. But they were taking on full responsibility to define what is good enough. And an example of that is it was a DVD player. They said that nobody was using it, so they literally ripped it out. So, and again, I think that on the idea of content or DVDs or things like that, I think it's more content, easier access to a greater amount of content is the way that people operate these days.
No.
Absolutely.
Now, the one thing, and this is where I'll go out on not on a limb, but say I've said this. I read it. I wrote a piece for CE Pro. Saying this exact same thing. John hit on it, and that is the voice. That is voice control. I've had an Amazon Echo for about 6 months now, right?
Okay.
Good interface. It's intuitive to a point. It's a certain thing called a skill, right? Where if you want to interface with your Nest, or you want to interface with Spotify, or something that's not Amazon specific, you have to say, Alexa, you tell Nest to turn down to 70 degrees, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The fact that both Control4 and Crestron have what's called native apps, a native skill, is huge. So I could, once if I had a Control4 system or a Crestron system in my house, and again, or in the corporate boardroom, and it's connected, you could simply say, Alexa, turn on the lights in the kitchen.
Right.
That right there is absolutely huge for the smart home. But this is where it goes back to, once the board members, once the CEO, once the CTO realizes that they can do this and gets used to it in their house, goes back to the Apple TV, where they could wirelessly connect to, from their iPad to their TV. They're going to walk into the boardroom and say, why can't I do this?
Yeah, I think that's where, oddly enough, I think that's where systems integration companies could really come into play. I mean, as you said, the native conversation, again, if you want to tell Alexa, if it's not native to it, turn on Nest or turn on Apple, turn on whatever it might be, it makes sense. But, how we most likely use a conference room is start to teleconference. And then we define behind that all the natural steps that have to occur for that.
Yep.
I mean, that's where the value of this whole thing is. I can't tell you how many. I go from my standpoint. We've had this conversation a dozen times on every podcast I've been on. I walk into my boardroom and go, "What do I have to do to get this meeting started?" Because I got to go through page turns. Because it's not that we've overcomplicated. We've overfeatured the capabilities. I don't need that stuff. I really just want to have a meeting start. And I think that the end users are very willing to have those conversations now and say, listen, this is my workflow. I don't need to do that.
Well, it goes back to, and again, used to be a programmer, I still kind of sort of do it on, whatever. The user interface is absolutely huge. It is critical to the success of any programming job and any control job.
Right.
Because if it is not intuitive, if it is too complicated, it will not be used, and therefore it is a fail. Right.
Yeah, so you just change it to, okay, and again, this is one of the things that we have to start doing. We've had this conversation, Tim. Change the name for that person that does that from programmer to user experience person.
But they can be two different people.
Yeah, they could be, but
be different people.
But it's still a function that has to
and sometimes should be, actually.
Yes.
I love my programmer friends, right? I got Goalie that works for you guys.
Great guy.
Right?
Deeply talented.
Yeah, incredibly talented when it comes to the ones and zeros and talking, whether it's over IP or 232. Mm-hmm. Some of my greatest programmer friends should not ever touch a graphical user interface to save their life. I'm sorry. They don't like talking to people in general. Right? They just don't. They're wonderful introverts, and that's fine, right? I'm all with them when it comes to that. But then on the other spectrum of that, you have guys like Rich Fregosa, right? Rich has been doing this for 30, 40, 40 years, but 25, 30 years. I'm going to get in trouble. But has an artist heart, right? And gets it, right? And gets the interface. You need the people who design websites to design your interfaces, because the people who design websites really well and get the back and forth and get the user interaction, those are the same types of folks you want designing your touch panels.
I agree. I think that we've had this conversation about budgeting for next year, and there are definitely positively little circles on those roadmaps where it says graphic artist hired here. Yep. I mean, we're still struggling with it. But you go back, to this original question, CEDIA is once again and is beginning hopes, wishes, and dreams show. You know what I mean? And it's nice to go to that and see that, because there is an expectation from not just a consumer audience but from everyday audience as to how they're going to interface with technology. Nest doing a camera now, and all these people just doing cameras, and it's just remarkable. Some of it's a little complicated, but I mean, it's going to be a rush into our area for sure.
Yeah, and real quickly, one of the last coolest things I saw at CEDIA last week was I saw Troy Aikman. So, all right, that's.
Oh wow! Oh.
He had nothing. He had nothing else to do. Is that so?
Well, it was like on the Thursday. It was the first day of the show. I mentioned it to Vin Bruno because they had a number of cowboy classic, great players there.
Right.
And he's telling me they had Ed Too Tall Jones and this, that, and the other. I said, and you guys had Troy Aikman. He goes, no, we didn't.
Oh, it's his own little thing.
He just showed up and was.
Oh, did he really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not reading the playbook. He wants to go design some electronics.
Hanging out with my buddy Joe Buck is what he's doing. So,
be respectful. Do what the Indianapolis Colts guy did. Go in commercials.
All right.
Commercials.
Here we go. Next story. Our good friends and for full disclosure, DisplayNote happens to be an underwriter of AVNation, but still a cool story from Innovate on the Net. DisplayNote adds Dell to their roster of OEM partners. They're working with Dell, and basically they're inserting the DisplayNote technology, their software, into some of Dell's interactive projectors, starting to ship this year, actually. This year and next. John, first question actually for you from an integrator standpoint. Why does having more than one partner like this, because this is not DisplayNote's first partner, they also have an agreement with Christie as well. Does it help when you're trying to sell a solution, having multiple places for DisplayNote or anybody else to have that in different types of technology or different types of partners?
I would say it's probably going to be more commonplace than we could ever imagine. And I think it's definitely beneficial to both the manufacturer, even if let's go from a Christie standpoint. You're losing a market share because of a feature, whatever that might be. It could be interactivity. It could be, so you go find that resource, and as long as it's inserted into the food chain, you're good to go. It's more of a, in some of these cases, it's just to offset the potential loss of business. And what I mean by that is, but do you have smart software? No. Okay, well, I'm going to go find something that has, because it's the software that's driving the business. It's not the bright projector that's doing the selling. It's solution selling to a large degree. I'll give you another really, really big announcement this week. Was Cisco has inserted Utelligy software into their offering.
Yeah.
That's not a little deal.
No,
that's a big deal. And it's just good foresight and a good awareness that coming together like that to provide the correct solution for the application is the way to go.
All right, Gina, from your standpoint and from the manufacturer standpoint, walk me through partnering with another manufacturer, right? Whether that's on a job, because there's a lot of times that FSR and another manufacturer will come in and basically help each other out to get in the door of an education place or get John's business, or when it comes to making product. How does that work? I mean, how do manufacturers, I guess the best way to ask this is, how do manufacturers work well together?
Well, clearly they work well together when they're non-competing manufacturers.
Okay.
But that isn't always the case. So, for example, FSR created years ago brackets for our floor boxes and our wall boxes that can be used to install Crestron DM transmitters, scalers. And at that time, have as sophisticated a drag and drop simple control as they do now. While we partnered with Crestron for their hardware side, they started really going into the world that the Flex is in, and that's a very simple.
And the Flex, real quickly, the Flex is FSR's drag and drop control system.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
That's
Sorry
right.
about that. So there was no issues with that, but what we found was that when there's opportunity to support each other in the integration space, to help each other create systems that are more seamless, easier to get through for our integration partners, that's where the real opportunities are. So those brackets enabled our integrators to be able to put in a DM transmitter and a 4-inch floor box where they would not have been able to otherwise. So both FSR and Crestron saw that synergy there, overlooking the potential for a really tiny little bit of overlap in the control space. and move forward with that. And since then, we've put partnerships together with SVSI, with AMX, and with Cisco on some other bracketry. So I think when the solution makes sense, makes our integration partners' lives easier, and allows for non-competing manufacturers to work towards that goal, that's when that synergy makes sense. In this specific instance with DisplayNote, DisplayNote needed some sort of tangible hardware interface in order to use their software. And so that synergy was built on the need for that hardware because they are a software company. And Dell wasn't getting into that space. So
yeah, I also think that the other logical thing is that it's either it makes a perfectly good sense because it's an underserved marketplace, and where they literally have a client base that, Dell's client base is completely different than Christie's, but they've already established, and this is just an added feature to what they're already providing. So they could pick up immediate sales in a zero time period. And that's one of the things I think there's probably a good reason to do it.
Well, and John, you also made a good point. The fact that they're not going to get into it, right? They're not going to spend the R&D to develop this. They can just partner with DisplayNote and move on.
Right.
All right. Last one here, guys, and I'll let you get out of here. It comes from AV Network and AVNetwork.com. It was one of their blogs, and it kind of caught me. I just thought it was kind of cool, right? It's called "We All Need a Mentor." It's by a gentleman by the name of Jay Myers, and he writes in here, quote unquote, "In the early days of my company, I got the chance to meet and visit with a gentleman by the name of Wilson, who was the founder of Holiday Inn and a business legend. This gentleman gave him the encouragement, also sound advice when it comes to the company's startup days when he was developing his company." So what I want to do is ask, first of all, why you two think that we need mentors in the AV space, but also in our business lives, and then get into maybe who a couple of yours are. John, first of all, for you, why do we need mentorship?
I have to tell you that I think that just you can't listen to the voices in your head that make you do evil things.
Mm-hmm.
You need an outside voice. You always do. You asked, and again, it's pretty funny. I'm laughing about this because one of my mentors is Corey Schaefer, who everybody in the industry knows. But I've known Corey now for, I'm afraid to say, probably 7 years, maybe a little bit longer. And we literally had a conversation last night. And some of the mentoring is, faced with this obstacle, how would you go about it? Getting a different opinion, or it's, should I choke them or I shouldn't choke them? And then you can just have it out. And you can say things to an outside mentor if they do their job properly, where it's you have emotion and you have your fears and your angers, and that effect alone, getting it out, helps you think through it. But if you pick the right one, and it's really a formalized mentorship, which is really the way to go about it, is that you have an objective of what you want to accomplish. You've identified that person and how they're going to help you with that position. They'll tie you with other resources that they have had. It is absolutely a life-lifting and growing experience. So I don't think you should ever limit the fact that it should be in an industry. I just think that as a person, we have a responsibility to be a mentor and also realize that we need mentorship.
All right, Miss Gina, why do we need mentors?
Well, first of all, Jay, in that article, Jay seems to be talking about, I think, two kind of different types of people as mentors. One would be the business coach, right? One would be that business coach that knows about business, that can guide you on the business end, that can make connections for you with HR companies, with legal help, with those types of business connections. And then on the other side, he was talking about a support similar to what John was saying, where, should I choke him or should I not choke him? So, and
admit it, you've had to say that too.
No, yeah.
So that's kind of, in that article, it kind of got me thinking, are we now grouping both business coaching and mentorship together? And I feel like the answer would be no. I feel like they're very separate entities, and I think that each one has its space. I feel like mentorship is more personal development, and I feel like business coaching is obviously professional development. They definitely overlap, but I think that you should then have two people you rely on for those two very different people you rely on for those two different aspects: business coaching and mentorship. From my standpoint, Chuck Wilson is a mentor to me. I think that he is phenomenal. He has a phenomenal brain. He is always calm. And I can be a little bit feisty.
Yes, I agree with you.
So I think we really balance each other out. I was talking to somebody yesterday at that event, and they were saying, I have to get my young guys to work harder, work faster, and he's like, I just don't know how to do it. I don't know how to train them the right way. I'm putting together a WordPress website with our little links to training and things like that, but they don't seem to be using it. How do I fix that? And I said, well, why don't you ask them what they want and how they want to learn? Learn from them,
right.
Because that mentorship should be a two-way mentorship.
I'm gonna recant a story with you with Chuck Wilson, by the way. He was at their business leadership conference, and he asked a pressing question, and I started to do exactly as you just described it. I'm yelling and screaming, and I look at him. I said, obviously, you do not know how serious this are because you're not yelling back at me, right? And he just calmly went, it's Midwest style, and said, gave me a simple answer, and went, oh, okay. So it's nice to have that either mentorship and or coaching for sure.
No, and see, I would say so. I have
right.
what I would call two direct mentors. One is on this panel right now, and that is Mr. Green. The other one is Brock McGinnis.
I would list Brock immediately too. He's just a center of sanity.
Yes. Well, the center of sanity who dresses like he does. So, but
and always get a good wine selection after the mentoring too.
Yes, absolutely. If only I could fit into those jackets. But the other thing I would say is and that's kind of personal and business. Understand that AVNation is a startup, right? We're bootstrapping this, and they help center me. They've helped me in the last few years learn and develop as a salesperson as we go out and talk to underwriters. But the other part is people who you don't know. And you learn from reading, right, or from connecting with people remotely. One of my business and personal development mentors, I would say, is a guy by the name of John Maxwell, who writes some phenomenal leadership books. Right, Never met the guy before in my life. Right, never met him. I probably never will. But I would count that that sort of mentorship as well. Not to the extent and not to the personal connection that John has with Corey and Gina with Chuck. But still, that is another type and another level of mentorship. So. Yeah,
I think it would be foolish to go alone.
Yeah,
that's a recommendation, and you don't have to make a major investment in it. And we've talked multiple times, like even in social media. I mean, I would imagine if you reached out through social media to your mentor, that you would find a way to connect, and they would. And the most amazing thing is the people that are really successful like that respond back.
Yeah,
they know the value of mentorship, and they know the value, and they get it.
Yeah.
So,
all right, I'm going to let you guys go on that note. That very note, Miss Gina Sansevero. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
How do people find you or FSR?
Find me on Twitter at Gina Sands and FSR at FSR_EDU.
All right, very good. Mr. Green, sir, thank you.
Thank you as always. Always entertaining.
And how do people find you and or Advanced AV?
Right, Advanced AV website, www.advancedav.com. And you can find me on Twitter at jgreen6 with the word 6 spelled out. And just one other thing I want to throw out there. We have, speaking of mentoringship, we sponsored a TEDx talk. We're doing a TEDx talk in Harrisburg that we've had the privilege of working with one of their crews and setting up that conference. And that's actually on Sunday, October 2nd. We're looking forward to that. So if you could go, anybody can go to the TEDx Harrisburg and like that page. It'd be great.
That's my anniversary, so I probably won't go that day. So.
Yeah, Sunday. That's right.
My name is Tim. Don't follow me, but go by the website avnation.tv, avnation.tv. A couple things we actually have coming down the pipeline. Mr. Green mentioned the TEDx on the 2nd. We will, and I say we, as in is me and a handful of our AVNation cohorts, will be in New York City, dead center, Times Square, baby, the 24th through the 27th of October. Our good friends over at Daily Do have invited us once again to attend and hang out with them during New York Digital Signage Week. It's a cool event if you're into digital signage. If you're getting into that type of market, wouldn't hurt you at all if you're in that area to come hang out. Digital Signage Federation has an event. Adrian's group, Daily Do, has an event. Samsung has an event. Chris, if you're in digital signage in any way, shape, or form, you might want to check that out. If you can't make it, though, we are redoing an entire probably one of the coolest shows we did last year. It is live from Daktronics booth. We're going to do a program. It's live from their offices in the middle of Times Square with this big, ginormous Revlon shot right behind us. Seriously, one of the neatest, from a visual standpoint, one of the neatest shows we did, but also from a content standpoint, one of the neatest shows that we did last year. And we're adding to that and doing actually another one that week at the Christie Experiential Center in New York as well. So we're doing that. Frank Pisano from Chief is going to join us for that. Adrian Cottrell from Daily Do is joining us. Some folks from Clear Channel, some folks from the Times Square Alliance. I mean, all sorts of really cool folks. So
yeah, I'd like to throw in a seconding of that. Again, we weren't able to attend last year, but as I can pleasantly recall the podcast surrounding that show that you did last year, and it reset our go-to market on some things. It's very informative. If you're a systems integrator that has anything to do with digital signage, if you can't attend the show, follow AVNation that week. Honest to God, Tim, it was really some good insight and changed the way we went to market.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. That was the whole idea. So
looking forward to it.
The last week of October will be in New York. If you're around, cool. If you're not, just check out the website. Also heading to AVEC. Handful of us are heading to AVEC. Handful of us are heading to CECI Summit. So check that out as well. Last thing, doing what?
Anybody going to InfoComm Connections in New York?
Yes, I'll be there.
That is actually the same week as AVEC. So it's a busy week.
Yeah.
And there's some small election that week too. So
I just want to be in the bunker the day after. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
So if I can't be at the show that day, I'm gonna be in the bunker the day after the election.
All right. Last thing, we're revamping our newsletters. We've got 2 now, one for general, and we're doing one also for marketing folks. So check that out as well. All that stuff is exactly where I said. AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.